there, I'm Don.
And hi, I'm Cindy. Welcome to Pearls of Liberty, August 4th, 2012. This week we know the Olympics is going on, but we ourselves we're not officially boycotting the Olympics. We're just not really that interested in watching the Olympics. We've heard that there is a lot of occult symbolism embedded in even the Olympic symbol, I guess, and certainly we heard some interesting thing about the mascots, that they're actually the two towers which represent law and land, the priest and the king. And we've heard some great teaching about that subject from Ken Cousins, and he's often on the Morning Liberty program with R.J. Hender on Fridays, and Ken does a beautiful job of explaining the significance of the two pillars, what they represent, law and land, and how those two things have been used to control mankind for many, many generations now.
Also associated with the fasci, the bundles of wheat or grain or whatever it is, and the two pillars, and you'll find them in many places, often along with the fasci, which is the root meaning of fascism. And you'll see those two pillars on your Social Security card. You'll see them in both houses of Congress near the front of the podium, and these people love symbology, and that's why they're there, because they know that it has a subliminal influence on you. They know that in places of significance they're going to put objects that have significant symbolic meaning, because it creates a subconscious effect on individuals and on the culture as a whole.
So it's a binding together, it's a bringing together, and we've talked about how life force is drawn off, and really in many respects the Olympics, and although we did not watch the opening ceremonies, some friends told us some very specific things about them, and we also heard from Alex Jones about some things in the opening ceremonies, some very occult symbolism and some very dark rituals embedded into that program. And like the halftime show at the Super Bowl, what happens when the public watches that, and if you give any kind of emotional response to it, it's actually as if you were participating in that dark ritual. So you may shrug it off and say, oh, it doesn't mean anything, but actually the fact that they are placing those symbols in the context of something that will be watched by so many millions of people, their intention is to draw those millions of people into that ritual and use the emotional power and the soul power, if you will, of those millions of people to reinforce their dark spiritual influence. David Icke was on the Alex Jones show several weeks ago now, and he was discussing his concern regarding the Olympics, that there's potential for false flag terror there, and just the vibes that are being released, especially coming on the tails of the Queen's Jubilee. David Icke felt that these two events were going to be releasing a lot of occult energy in England, and he is holding an event in October which he hopes will purge this influence so that the atmosphere is cleared of all that. And I know if you're a Christian, this might all sound kind of out there, but the spiritual dimension is real, and there are real spiritual transactions that are taking place. We wanted to, just because we brought it up last week, just curious about what was going on with Benjamin Fulford. He did publish his blog this past Monday, and all is well with him. He's fine. He was in a series of meetings in Canada, and we'll put a link to his blog so that you can catch up with that if you'd like to.
He's doing good. It sounded like he's trying to put some pressure on people, at least in Canada, where he was, to begin to publish what's really going on in the world, to break through some of the propaganda that Western journalism is suffering under. And it's all because people have been bought off. People know that their jobs are in danger if they start exposing things about deep level fraud in the banking system, about events like 9/11 or the recent shooting in Aurora, or anything along those lines that are part of the matrix. Once you get to a certain level or are able to see it, you you have a choice of either remaining in the false system and working with it, because that's where your paycheck comes from, and sometimes people have enough courage to step out and do that. Just mention that I was encouraged this week to listen to Brian Sussman on the Alex Jones show, and years ago in the 90s, I remember when Brian came on, and he was a meteorologist, weatherman on a Bay Area channel, and took a serious cut in pay because he couldn't do this stuff anymore. He couldn't be a part of the propaganda. You think, what's more neutral than weather? But he began to see so much that was going on in the world that he decided he had no choice but to step out of it and to try to reach people. So he created a little niche for himself on the KSFO conservative radio in the Bay Area, and he published a couple of books exposing ClimateGate and the whole weather fraud, the whole eco-tyranny fraud. And this is an example, the reason I'm mentioning it, of a guy who had the courage to break out of the paradigm and not be dependent on that paycheck. And his rewards are awesome, and I hope to hear him more often on Alex Jones' show. Great guy.
He was very well spoken. It's worth listening to that interview. He was, it was very clear, very good communication. Another, we'll just mention briefly, another Alex Jones interview this week. On the evening broadcast, Tuesday, Alex interviewed Fritz Springmeier, and it really was just an exceptional interview. A lot of times when Alex has Fritz on during the radio program, it feels rushed, and it feels like Alex is feeling pressure about communicating a certain way, whatever. This interview Tuesday evening, July 31st, was just excellent, and we will have the link to that video. Fritz always helps us understand and remember the spiritual side of all this, that the Bible says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against unseen spiritual forces. And the more we can understand of those unseen spiritual forces, the better equipped we will be when we are confronted with evil. And Don has had some revelation this week about an event that took place in the Bible, and an event with extremely long-term implications. And he'll share that. Okay, well, in the biblical account in the book of Genesis, there's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that the man and the woman were not supposed to eat of, and of course they did. And what I realized is that usually we pass over that and don't think too much about it, and yeah, we live in a fallen world, and now people do bad things, not just good things. They're not in fellowship with God, and yeah, there's this sin that taints everything, and that's sort of how we explain what the result of that knowledge of good and evil is. Yeah, we see bad, yeah, we see good. Sometimes we choose bad when we don't really want to. But I really think that there's a much deeper meaning there, and I
I believe it has a lot to do with the Hegelian dialectic and false flags, and the way in which humans became able to be deceived and able to be deceivers by using the knowledge of good and evil to to manipulate other people, to do the whole problem, reaction, solution thing. So when you have this knowledge of good and evil, you are able to create an environment in which people will respond that they're wired to respond, to reject the evil, but you bring about the evil. If you're a sociopath, a psychopath, one of the ruling elite of the planet, this is how they have manipulated mankind for centuries. And it's all because they're using this knowledge of good and evil in a manipulative way. So I've come to realize, yeah, this knowledge of good and evil, it's tied to the ability to manipulate other people, and that is what is so inherently evil, is that God created us to be free agents with our own wills, the ability, the will to choose God. But when people start manipulating other people through false pretenses, that's the depth of depravity in which we live. That's the fruits of the knowledge of good and evil. So that meant something significant to me. I hope that makes sense to you, especially to Christians, to believers, and hope you find that useful.
Well, there's bait, and you know, if you have ever gone fishing, you use different kinds of bait for different kinds of fish, and the social engineers have studied people long enough to realize that if we were fish, we don't all bite on the same kind of bait. So they have managed to devise different kinds of bait for people who have different passions or different interests. And just a few examples, Christians have had the bait of a free and safe Israel dangled. So that because they understand the mindset of people who read the Bible, placing a value in Israel. So they make it appear that Israel is threatened so that Christians will be willing to accept a war. They understand the mindset of people who are concerned about the environment, and they manipulate that. They use the green agenda as bait for the people who are concerned about the environment, and the list goes on and on. They're able to custom tailor what appears to be an ideal lifestyle, or at least a promise that will lead to fulfillment. And no matter who you are, no matter what your desires are, they understand you well enough to be able to at least try to seduce you. And in being aware of this bait, hopefully we can be better equipped to recognize it and to resist it, and maybe kind of be like the untouchables. I don't know.
Yeah, once you can see it, you can resist it. But if you can't see it, you can't resist it. And the bottom line here of what's operating is that you actually got Satan, the archenemy of God, who's trying to destroy God's creation, created this, in the biblical account, the temptation and offered the forbidden fruit. And the result of that is that you've got some humans that become little Satans. They do the same thing. They create this bait. They offer this wisdom with false pretenses. And that's a cause of most of the wars that occur in the world. They're people who want the war because of what they can get from it will attack themselves and disguised as the enemy in order to bring that war about. And that's what we see more times than not in this world. So that's the depth of this perversity of the knowledge of good and evil.
So I guess maybe anytime there's a very simplistic answer, if you just get rid of this people group, or if you just attack that army, everything's going to be fine. That's probably always suspect. Although in a very fundamental way, we believe, and it seems evident, that once the social engineers, the cabal, is removed from power, there will be an opportunity for, it won't be overnight instantaneous answer to all mankind's problems, but I think at least we'll be able to have a fighting chance to build a better world.
I want to also mention a quote from Max Keiser that I thought was absolutely brilliant, and it fits in here. And he said that whenever you see a group being scapegoated, they're being prepared for death. The Jews in Nazi Germany. And think about it. What group is being scapegoated today in America, in our culture? And I think you can make a pretty good case that it's the poor. It's the people that are demonized for living off the government, and then the cabal derives up the resources, so they're no longer able to live, and then they're going to resist, and then the police state comes against them because they're resisting, and you have this setup in which you've got the Hegelian dialectic played out: problem, reaction, solution, and you've got this scapegoated group. So love the poor. They're not the source of the problem. They are being scapegoated.
Interestingly enough, the regions where the Jews lived were called ghettos, and we call the neighborhoods where our poor live ghettos. So yeah, how does that saying go? If not for the grace of God, there go I. I mean, it flatters our ego to believe that we're smart or that we work hard or whatever. And I'm not. Of course, it's good to be a determined person and to believe that you can make a difference in your life and in the lives of others. But well, let's face it. Different people have different resources. Parents imbue you with different ideals, and all those things make a difference in the kind of lives that we have. So it's very Christian, and I think very Jesus-like and even holy to always be willing to extend a hand to those less fortunate, or the poor.
Go in peace and think for yourself.